Good morning, bro. Picture this, a bustling roadside cafe tucked between gas stations and fast food joints. Cars pulled in and out, people laughed over coffee, and the world felt normal, until it didn't. Near the entrance, Lila, an 11-year-old girl battling pediatric cancer, sat quietly in her wheelchair. Her small frame was wrapped in a soft gray blanket with faint blue stripes, its texture rough from years of use but warm against her fragile body. Her thinning hair barely peeked out from under the brim of her faded red baseball cap, a gift from her dad, and she clutched the handles of her chair tightly, trying to block out the stares from strangers. Her parents had gone inside to grab food, leaving her alone for just a few minutes. But those minutes stretched into something unbearable when the roar of motorcycle engines shattered the calm. A group of bikers pulled into the lot, their laughter loud and boisterous. At first, they seemed harmless, but then one of them spotted Lila. "Hey boys, look at this," sneered their leader, pointing directly at her. The tension begins here. What would you do if you saw someone helpless surrounded by cruelty? Keep listening, because John Cena is about to step into the story. The bikers circled around Lila like predators closing in on prey. One of them leaned down, his snake tattoo snaking up his neck. "Lost, kid? Or is this your big day out?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. Another chimed in, "What's the matter, sweetheart? Cat got your tongue." Their laughter echoed through the parking lot, each word cutting deeper into Lila's fragile spirit. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the sound of birds chirping nearby. But when one biker grabbed her blanket and nudged her wheelchair, she froze. Humiliation burned in her chest, but worse than that was the realization dawning on her: no one was going to help. The scene grows darker. Will justice arrive, or will these bullies walk away unchallenged? Just as the situation reached its breaking point, a commanding voice cut through the chaos. "What do you think you're doing?" It was deep, unwavering, and filled with authority. The bikers froze mid-laugh, their heads snapping toward the source of the interruption like deer caught in headlights. Standing there was none other than John Cena, the WWE superstar known for his strength and charisma, but also for his heart. Cena's piercing blue eyes locked onto the leader of the bikers, who suddenly looked less confident. His broad shoulders and muscular frame radiated power, but it wasn't just his physical presence that silenced them, it was the fire in his gaze. He stepped forward deliberately, every movement radiating purpose. The sunlight glinted off his unmistakable face, casting a golden hue over the tense scene. He knelt beside Lila, his tone softening instantly. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice a stark contrast to the fury he had directed at the bikers. Lila nodded shakily, her tear-filled eyes widening in disbelief. Rising to his full height, Cena turned back to the group, his expression hardening. "You call picking on someone defenseless fun? That's not fun, that's pathetic." The confrontation escalates. How far will Cena go to protect Lila? When the tattooed biker tried to act tough, Cena didn't hesitate. With precision and power that left no room for doubt, he stepped forward, grabbed the man by his jacket, and executed one of his signature moves, a thunderous attitude adjustment. The impact sent shockwaves through the parking lot as the biker crashed hard onto the asphalt. Gasps rippled through the crowd of onlookers, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. But it wasn't over yet. Two more bikers charged at Cena simultaneously, their movements reckless and fueled by misplaced bravado. Cena ducked under a wild swing from the first attacker, grabbing him mid-motion and flipping him into the second biker with a perfectly executed suplex. Both men collided violently with the side of a parked car, leaving them dazed and struggling to get back up. The leader of the group, the graying-bearded man who had mocked Lila earlier, stepped forward now, trying to regain control of the situation. "Don't let him take you one at a time," he barked at his gang. But fear had already taken hold. One by one, they hesitated, their confidence crumbling in the face of CENA's unrelenting strength. CENA turned his piercing gaze toward the leader. "You think you're tough," he growled, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through steel. "Picking on a little girl who can't defend herself? You're nothing." The leader clenched his fists, attempting to mask his growing fear with anger. But when CENA lunged forward, closing the gap between them, the man flinched visibly. CENA didn't need to throw another punch. The message was clear. "We're done here," CENA said firmly, standing tall as the remaining bikers scrambled to their feet. "And if I ever see you or your gang anywhere near her again, you'll wish you'd walked away today." With muttered threats and curses, the bikers retreated to their motorcycles, speeding off in a cloud of dust. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by an uneasy silence. As the last engine faded into the distance, CENA turned back to Lila, kneeling beside her once more. His expression softened instantly. "They won't bother you again," he promised, his voice steady and reassuring. For the first time since the ordeal began, Lila managed a small, tearful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with gratitude. This moment marks only the beginning of CENA's involvement in Lila's life. Why does he feel such a strong connection to her, and what happens next? Later that evening, CENA couldn't shake the image of Lila's tear-filled eyes. He sat in his hotel room, scrolling through his phone as he tried to piece together who she was and what she was going through. It didn't take long for him to find a local social media post about the incident at the cafe. A bystander had uploaded a shaky video capturing CENA confronting the bikers. The comment section was filled with outrage over the cruelty Lila endured and praise for CENA stepping in. But one comment stood out. Someone mentioned recognizing Lila from the pediatric oncology unit at the nearby hospital. CENA's heart sank. He had suspected her frail appearance was due to illness, but seeing it confirmed hit him hard. She wasn't just fighting bullies. She was battling something far greater. That night, CENA made a decision. This wasn't going to be a fleeting act of heroism. He wanted to make a lasting difference in her life. The next morning, CENA reached out to his manager, explaining the situation. With his connections and resources, it didn't take long to gather information about Lila and her family. What he learned broke his heart further. They lived modestly, doing everything they could to afford her treatments, but the financial strain was overwhelming. Her prognosis was hopeful, but the journey ahead would be long and grueling. Determined to help, CENA contacted the hospital where Lila was being treated. Not only did he offer to cover the costs of her remaining treatments, but he also insisted on meeting her personally, not as a celebrity, but as someone who cared. A week later, CENA arrived at the hospital dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, so he slipped into the pediatric oncology ward quietly. When the nurse led him to Lila's room, he paused outside the door, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. Lila was sitting up in bed, a sketchpad resting on her lap. Her parents were seated nearby, their tired eyes lighting up when they saw CENA enter. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lila looked up, her wide eyes widening even more. "John Cena," she whispered, her voice barely audible. CENA grinned warmly, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Hey champ," he said softly. "Thought I'd check in on you." Her mother rose to greet him, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mr. Cena, we don't even know what to say. Thank you for what you did at the cafe." "You don't have to thank me," Cena replied, shaking his head firmly. "I'm just glad I was there. But I wanted to make sure you're doing okay." Lila nodded shyly. "I'm okay," she murmured, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Over the next hour, CENA talked with Lila and her family. He asked about her favorite things, her hobbies, her dreams, and what she missed most about being healthy. Lila opened up gradually, sharing her love for drawing and how much she wished she could visit the beach someday. CENA listened intently, taking mental notes of everything she said. Before leaving, he leaned forward, his tone serious but kind. Lila, I promise you this, I'm going to be here for you. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. You're not fighting this alone. For the first time, Lila smiled, a real genuine smile that lit up her face. Her parents exchanged grateful glances, overwhelmed by CENA's generosity and sincerity. As CENA walked out of the hospital that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Lila wasn't just about supporting her through cancer, it was about reminding her that she mattered. And CENA knew this was only the beginning. Inspired by Lila's love for the ocean, CENA began planning something extraordinary. He knew she dreamed of seeing the beach, feeling the sand beneath her feet, and hearing the waves crash against the shore. But this wasn't just about fulfilling a wish, it was about reminding her that life still held magic, even in the midst of her battle. CENA reached out to his network of contacts, securing a private beach house for Lila and her family. The location was serene, nestled along a stretch of coastline where the water shimmered like liquid gold under the sun. Knowing how fragile Lila's health could be, CENA coordinated with the hospital to ensure everything was safe. Medical staff would accompany them, ready to assist if needed. Every detail was meticulously planned, down to the limousine waiting outside the hospital on the day of their departure. When the day finally arrived, Lila's excitement was palpable. CENA greeted her at the hospital entrance, grinning as he helped her into the car. "Ready to see your dream come true, champ?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth. Lila nodded eagerly, clutching the plush wrestling championship belt CENA had gifted her earlier. Her parents climbed in beside her, their faces glowing with gratitude. The drive to the beach was filled with laughter and stories. CENA kept the mood light, cracking jokes and sharing tales from his childhood. As they approached the coast, the salty breeze began to seep through the open windows, carrying the unmistakable scent of the sea. When they pulled up to the house, Lila's eyes widened in awe. Decorated with balloons and streamers, it looked like a scene straight out of a fairy tale. CENA wheeled Lila down to the shoreline just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of amber and lavender, casting a warm glow over the waves. For a moment, Lila simply stared, her breath catching in her throat. It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. CENA smiled, crouching beside her. "Welcome to your dream, champ." He carried her closer to the water, letting the cool waves lap gently at her feet. She laughed, a bright, unrestrained sound that seemed to chase away all the shadows lingering in her heart. Her parents captured every moment on camera, tears streaming down their faces as they watched their daughter experience pure joy for the first time in months. That evening, they gathered around a small bonfire on the beach. CENA shared stories from his wrestling career, making Lila laugh with tales of his early days in the ring. He promised to take her to one of his matches as soon as she was strong enough, a promise that lit a spark of determination in her eyes. By the end of the trip, Lila's spirit felt renewed. It wasn't just the beauty of the ocean or the thrill of the adventure, it was the reminder that she was capable of overcoming anything. CENA had given her more than a memory, he had given her hope. As they returned to the hospital, Lila clung to the seashells she had collected, using them as symbols of strength to keep fighting. CENA, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Lila wasn't just about supporting her through cancer, it was about learning from her courage and resilience. Together, they were proving that even in the darkest times, light could be found. Back at the hospital, life returned to its usual rhythm, but this time, it felt different for Lila. The memory of the beach trip lingered like a warm embrace, giving her a renewed sense of purpose. Still, the road ahead was far from easy. Another round of chemotherapy loomed over her, and with it came the familiar dread, the nausea, the exhaustion, and the overwhelming weight of feeling trapped in a body that seemed determined to betray her. CENA, however, refused to let her face it alone. True to his word, he became a constant presence in her life, not just during the big moments but also during the quiet, painful ones. He visited regularly, always bringing something small yet meaningful to lift her spirits. One day it was a set of high-quality art supplies, sketch pads, colored pencils, and markers, all neatly packed in a personalized case with Champ engraved on the side. Another time, he brought handwritten notes from fellow wrestlers, each one filled with words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you know," read one note from Roman Reigns. "Never give up, kid, you've got this," wrote Becky Lynch. Lila cherished these gifts, but what meant the most to her was CENA's unwavering belief in her. On days when she felt too weak to even hold a pencil, he sat beside her, sharing stories or simply listening. He never pushed her to be anything other than who she was, a brave little girl fighting the toughest battle of her life. One afternoon, as Lila sketched quietly in her bed, CENA entered her room carrying a tote bag slung over his shoulder. His signature grin lit up the space, easing some of the tension that always hung heavy in hospital rooms. "Morning, Champ," he greeted her warmly, pulling up a chair next to her bed. "How are we feeling today?" Lila hesitated, her tired eyes flickering toward him before dropping back to her sketch pad. "Nervous," she admitted softly, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket draped over her legs. It was the day of her next treatment, and the thought of enduring another session filled her with dread. "That's okay," CENA said firmly, nodding as if to validate her feelings. "It's normal to feel that way. But remember, you're not facing this alone. You've got a whole team behind you, and that includes me." He reached into the tote bag and began pulling out items one by one. First was a plush wrestling championship belt, complete with her name engraved on a small golden plate. Lila's eyes lit up as she took it from him, running her fingers over the lettering. Next came a stack of handwritten notes from CENA's wrestling colleagues, each message filled with encouragement and strength. Finally, he revealed 2 tickets to his next live wrestling event. "These are for you and your parents," CENA explained, placing the tickets gently in her lap. "When you're feeling up to it, I want you to be my special guest. You'll sit ringside, and after the match, we'll get you in the ring for some photos. Deal?" Lila's smile widened as she nodded eagerly. "Deal." The room felt lighter as CENA continued to talk, his stories drawing laughter from both Lila and her parents. Her mother wiped away tears, overwhelmed by the kindness CENA showed their daughter. Her father shook his head in disbelief, still marveling at how much this man had done for them without expecting anything in return. As the nurses prepared Lila for her treatment, CENA stayed by her side, holding her hand when the 4 was inserted. His presence served as a distraction from the discomfort, a reminder that she was stronger than she believed. When the treatment began, Lila closed her eyes, imagining the ocean waves she had seen just days ago, the way they crashed against the shore, wild yet beautiful. CENA sat quietly, letting her rest but never leaving her side. Hours passed, and when the session finally ended, Lila looked drained but grateful. She whispered a quiet thank you to CENA, who responded with a gentle squeeze of her hand. Over the next several weeks, CENA's visits became a routine. He wasn't just there for the big moments, he was there for the quiet ones too. Whether it was helping her practice sketching or sharing funny anecdotes from his wrestling career, CENA made sure Lila knew she mattered. Her progress was slow but steady. The treatments began to show positive results, and though the journey was far from over, Lila faced it with renewed determination. CENA's unwavering support reminded her that she was worth fighting for, that her life mattered. True to his promise, CENA invited Lila and her family to one of his live wrestling matches. The anticipation leading up to the event was electric, not just for Lila, but for CENA as well. He had spent weeks planning every detail, ensuring that this night would be unforgettable for her. When they arrived at the arena, Lila's excitement was palpable. Her wheelchair, decorated with colorful streamers and a custom-made sign reading "Champ," drew smiles from everyone around them. She wore a specially designed shirt with CENA's iconic catchphrase, "Never give up," emblazoned across the front in bold letters. The crowd erupted into cheers when they spotted Lila being escorted to her seat right next to the ring. Word of her story had spread thanks to CENA's quiet advocacy, and fans waved, chanted her name, and even handed her handmade signs of encouragement. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lila didn't feel like a patient or someone defined by illness. She felt like a star. As the lights dimmed and the opening music began, Lila clutched the plush championship belt CENA had given her during their beach trip. Her parents sat beside her, holding hands, their eyes glistening with pride and gratitude. Then, the moment came. CENA appeared in the ring, his entrance sending shockwaves through the arena. Fireworks exploded overhead as he jogged down the ramp, pausing briefly before stepping onto the apron. Instead of diving straight into the match, CENA grabbed a microphone and addressed the roaring audience. His voice boomed through the speakers, commanding silence despite the energy in the room. "Tonight," he began, his piercing blue eyes scanning the crowd, "is about more than wrestling. It's about strength, resilience, and the power of never giving up. And there's someone very special here tonight who embodies all of that." He turned toward Lila, pointing directly at her. "Lila, this match is for you." The crowd went wild, chanting her name louder than ever before. Lila's cheeks flushed with pride as she waved shyly, her small hands trembling with emotion. Her parents hugged each other tightly, overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding their daughter. CENA smiled warmly at her before stepping back to face his opponent. The match began, and it was everything Lila had dreamed of. CENA performed with his trademark intensity, executing signature moves like the five-knuckle shuffle and the STF with precision. Every time he landed a move, he glanced over at Lila, dedicating each moment to her. The crowd ate it up, erupting in applause whenever CENA turned their attention to Lila. As the match reached its climax, CENA faced off against his opponent in a dramatic showdown. With the entire arena on their feet, he delivered his finishing move, the attitude adjustment, and pinned his opponent for the win. The place exploded in cheers, but instead of celebrating in the ring, CENA stepped out and walked directly to Lila. Fans parted to let him through as he approached her, still sweaty and breathless from the fight. Kneeling beside her, CENA handed her the championship belt he had just won. "This belongs to you, champ," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You're the real winner here." Lila's hands trembled as she took the belt, her eyes brimming with tears. She hugged it tightly, unable to find the words to express how she felt. The crowd began to chant again, louder than ever, "Lila! Lila!" After the event, CENA took Lila and her family backstage for a private tour. Wrestlers greeted her with hugs and words of encouragement, treating her like part of the team. For the first time, Lila felt truly strong. CENA stayed by her side the entire time, ensuring she felt comfortable and special. Before they left, he knelt beside her once more, looking her in the eye. "You've come so far, Lila," he said firmly. "And I know you're going to keep going no matter what happens. Remember this, you're a fighter, and you've already won the hardest battles. I'm proud of you." Lila nodded, her smile brighter than it had ever been. "Thank you, John," she whispered softly, her voice full of sincerity. That night, as they returned to the hospital, Lila replayed the memories of the match, the cheers of the crowd, and the love she had felt. Those moments carried her through the coming weeks, fueling her determination to keep fighting. Months later, Lila stood on stage at a charity event supporting pediatric cancer research. The room was filled with people, families who had faced similar battles, doctors and nurses dedicated to the cause, and fans of John Cena who had come to show their support. But tonight wasn't about Cena, it was about Lila. Dressed in a bright yellow sundress that matched her newfound confidence, she held the microphone tightly in her small hands. Her faded red baseball cap still sat tilted slightly forward, a reminder of how far she'd come. Cena stood just off stage, watching her with pride. He had been the one to introduce her as the guest of honor earlier, his voice filled with emotion as he described her journey. "This is Lila," he had said, his tone steady but laced with admiration. "She's not just a survivor, she's a fighter, an inspiration, and proof that kindness can change lives." Now, as Lila addressed the audience, her voice was soft but unwavering. She spoke about her battle with cancer, the days when she felt like giving up, and the moments that kept her going. "There were times when I thought I couldn't do it," she admitted, glancing briefly at Cena. "But then someone showed me that I wasn't alone. He reminded me that even in the darkest times, there's always hope." The crowd listened intently, many wiping away tears as she continued. "I used to think I was weak because I got sick. But now I know, I'm strong because I fought back. And if I can do it, so can anyone else." Her words resonated deeply, especially for the parents in the audience holding their children close. When she finished speaking, the room erupted into applause, chants of "Lila! Lila!" echoing through the space. Cena stepped forward, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they took a bow together. Afterward, Cena pulled Lila aside backstage. "You're a natural," he said with a grin, ruffling her hair gently. "I think you've got a bright future ahead of you, champ." Lila smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Maybe I'll become a wrestler like you one day." Cena laughed, shaking his head. "I'd love that. But no matter what you choose to do, I'll always be in your corner." That night marked a turning point for Lila, not just as a survivor, but as someone who could inspire others. Together, she and Cena launched initiatives to raise awareness and funds for pediatric cancer treatment. They visited hospitals, shared stories on social media, and worked tirelessly to ensure that families facing similar battles wouldn't have to face them alone. Their partnership became a beacon of hope, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. Years passed, and Lila's life transformed in ways she once thought impossible. Remission became a reality, and with it came the freedom to dream again. She pursued her passion for art, enrolling in classes and honing her skills. Her sketches, once filled with scenes of struggle, now brimmed with vibrant colors, depicting courage, hope, and triumph. Each piece carried a message: no matter how dark the storm, the sun will rise again. Meanwhile, Cena remained a steadfast presence in her life. He didn't just celebrate her victories, he helped amplify her voice. Together, they launched initiatives to support families battling pediatric cancer, raising awareness and funds through charity events, social media campaigns, and even collaborations with other celebrities. Cena often introduced Lila as the real champion, emphasizing that her strength was the true inspiration behind their work. One day, while visiting Cena at his home gym, Lila found herself standing before a wall covered in photos and memorabilia from his wrestling career. Among them was a framed picture of the two of them taken during her first wrestling match experience, the night Cena handed her the championship belt. She smiled softly, remembering how far she'd come since that moment. "You know," Cena said, walking up beside her, "I've been thinking about something." Lila turned to him, tilting her head curiously. "What is it?" He gestured toward the photo wall. "You belong here too. Not because of me, but because of what you've done, for yourself, for others. Your story deserves to be told everywhere." Touched by his words, Lila nodded. And you're part of my story, John. I wouldn't be here without you. CENA placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression soft but serious. No, Lila. You did this. You fought every step of the way. I'm just glad I got to walk beside you. As the years went on, their bond deepened further. Lila became an advocate not only for pediatric cancer research but also for anti-bullying campaigns, drawing from her own experiences in that parking lot so many years ago. She traveled across the country, speaking at schools, hospitals, and community centers, sharing her journey and reminding others that kindness always triumphs over cruelty. CENA joined her whenever possible, using his platform to amplify her message. Together, they inspired countless people, young and old, to believe in themselves and to stand up for those who couldn't. Their partnership proved that heroism wasn't defined by physical strength or fame. It was about lifting others up when they needed it most. On one particularly memorable occasion, Lila returned to the same roadside cafe where her life had changed forever. This time, she wasn't alone. CENA accompanied her, along with her parents and a small group of friends. As they sat outside, enjoying coffee and laughter, Lila glanced around the parking lot, now peaceful and unremarkable compared to the chaos of years past. It feels surreal, she admitted, sipping her drink. Being back here, knowing how different everything turned out. CENA smiled, leaning back in his chair. Yeah, but look at you now. You're unstoppable. Lila chuckled, shaking her head. Not unstoppable. Just determined. And that's all you need to be, CENA replied firmly. Their friendship continued to flourish, built on mutual respect, trust, and an unshakable belief in the power of kindness. While CENA had spent decades inspiring millions in the wrestling ring, it was Lila who reminded him of the true meaning of strength, resilience, compassion, and the ability to make someone feel seen when they felt invisible. In the end, their story wasn't just about overcoming adversity. It was about the extraordinary impact one person can have on another's life. CENA taught Lila that she was capable of achieving anything she set her mind to, while Lila reminded CENA that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. Together, they proved that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward despite it. And as they stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: no one fights alone.
And that's where our story ends. What did you think of this story? Share your emotions in the comments below. We'd love to know what you remember most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And if you are in the mood for another exciting story, check out our next video. It's waiting for you. Until then, stay curious, get inspired, and keep exploring the stories that make life extraordinary. See you in the next one.